bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the most read group of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more, all featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL, from the great one to the next one, from the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. My name is Jim Parsons. I'm here with thehotcareers.com. It feels like such a long time since we've talked to you because we took a week off last week. Didn't have a ton of content to talk about, so we figured, you know what, this is a really good time to take a little breather, and we'll come back rejuvenated, ready to go. And so we've got two guys with us that are going to do that with us this week. Brian Swane is here. Brian, how are you?
Doing good, Jim. You?
Good. I feel refreshed. We've had a week off. Not that I needed it, but it's kind of nice to take a step back and see what's going on. And wasn't a ton of news in the Edmonton Oilers realm of things going on. So it was a good week for us to go. But we have an idea that we're going to discuss tonight here. Julian Mongillo is with us. Julian, how are you?
I'm good. I have had 2 weeks off because I missed the one before that. And it feels like a month, but I'm happy to be back. And yeah, I know. I'm back now and I'm ready to chat about everything we got here today.
Well, what we're going to do tonight or today or whenever you happen to be watching this for the first time, we're going to talk about value contracts, something that is very important around this time of the year because GMs are doing their final little bit of business. We got about a month before the season kicks off, the preseason begins. They're building their last little pieces of the team. And what really happens for a lot of GMs at this point is going, okay, well, what can we squeeze in here? Who's our best deal? Can we move this piece before we get the season started? So we're going to take a look at the Edmonton Oilers specifically and go through what we think are the best value contracts on the roster. Now, we're going to break it up into three different categories. One, we're going to have, and we can change the name. It's totally informal. I could care less what we actually call these, but the first category is going to be like good contracts with good value. So you're looking at a player and you're going, okay, that's a pretty good deal. The second category is going to be great value. So, okay, no, that's a good, like not just good, but that's a really excellent value for the team. Somebody who could really pay off for what the Oilers are paying them could really produce quite well. And then the last category is going to be our either excellent or best or elite value contracts, where we're going to look at the players on the Oilers. And we haven't talked about this in advance. We don't know what our answer is going to be. We're all going to have probably different takes on who the best value contracts are on this team. We're going to go through that. So you guys set and ready to go?
Yes, sir.
You bet.
So let's start on the low end. We'll go from lowest to best. So we'll call the good value contracts first. Brian, I'm going to start with you. If you had to pick somebody who you looked at on this Oilers roster, and you can pick a defenseman, a forward, a center, whatever you want to pick, short-term, long-term contract, however you want to go about valuing this, who would be a good value for you? Now, I know there's going to be more than one player, but who would be the guy that stands out as a good? He's not great. He's not elite, but he's a good value. He's going to project pretty well for the team. Who would you pick on this Oilers?
Wait, let me answer for Brian. Stuart Skinner.
For those of you that don't watch the show regularly, Brian is a big Stuart Skinner fan, and that is a good contract because he's not being paid very much. But he has also not played an NHL game yet, so we have no idea what his value is going to be. So you can pick Stuart Skinner if you want to, Brian. But who are you going to choose?
No, I got to keep you on your toes now, so I'm going to come with somebody completely different. But I'm going to stay in goal for this one. I'm going to put an asterisk on this because this is depending on how much they use him. But if he ends up somehow that the Oilers offload Koskinen or dump him in the minors, or by some miracle someone claims him off waivers, however it happens, Alex Stalock is a great price for what they would be paying for a backup goaltender. Presumably that's what his role would be, backing up Mike Smith. And this is a guy that he was pretty good playing around 40 games a couple seasons ago in Minnesota, carrying the load down the stretch for them. I think he could be a really good backup goalie. You might have it there, Jim. I think he's 875.
785. So you got the numbers right, just in the wrong order. Yeah. Well, 1 year left. He's 34 years old, 785,000. Then he becomes an unrestricted UFA.
Yeah, so I mean, to pay, especially relative to obviously what you'd be paying Koskinen, but I think if you can get yourself a good, reliable, veteran experienced backup goalie, which he checks all the boxes as far as I'm concerned, for Stalock, for under $1 million, let alone under 8,000, That's a heck of a deal. But of course, he may not even ever play a game for the Oilers. We don't know how this goaltending situation is going to shake down. So big asterisk next to that one. But there's my surprise first pick.
Okay,
going way off the board on that one.
Yeah, it is a little bit. I would say so. Julian, I'll ask, thinking I know the answers. You probably don't have the same player, but what's your immediate reaction to Brian's choice here?
I mean, I see where his head's at. I just don't know how much of a role he's going to actually be able to carve out for the team. And honestly, I think I'd rather see Stuart Skinner eat up that time on the ice instead of Stalock, and see what they have at least in him. But I see where his head's at. Hopefully he can get back on the ice. And I think goaltender depth is as needed as ever. So the more the merrier, especially because of the, asterisk even around Mike Smith and his health, and Koskinen, we've seen him struggle before. So if they can find some sort of, to have that depth as a third goalie that would be able to provide that, if it's not Skinner because he's still unproven, then by all means, I mean, it's a great pick.
Okay. So I'm going to ask this question of Brian. Is it mutually exclusive that a player cannot have a good value if they don't play? I know the answer I'm going to go with, but I'm curious of what you think. So do you need to play and do something on the ice to be considered a good value contract?
And that's why I say there's an asterisk next to that one, is that if he's not, if he's not playing, then, but if he's not playing, he's not going to be on this roster. Like, I think, I don't know how this goaltending situation is going to shake out, but I kind of think, okay, it's either they try and, just can't see this team rolling with 3 goalies for the entire season. So they either get rid of Koskinen or Stalock. They both can't be on the roster. But
actually, you know what? I'm going to give you more credit for this choice than you're giving yourself, because I'm going to argue you don't have to play to be a good value contract. Like, if a guy like Alex Stalock is there and he's ready to go and the Oilers can call on him at any time, he's only $785,000. He's not committed long-term. He can be moved, waived, done all sorts of, like, just having that in your back pocket is value, right? Just for the fact that Ken Holland can call on that. If Mikko Koskinen poops the bed or Mike Smith doesn't do what he did last season, having a guy like Alex Stalock, and now we saw how great he was in the Beauty League. If anybody's seen those videos, they're pretty outstanding, but this is the Beauty League. But just the fact that he looks good to go, this comfort level that the Oilers might have with going, hey, well, we've always got Alex Stalock. He might never play a single game, but just the fact that that if you're pooched and injuries bite you or what, you can go to him if you need to, because you've got that option. Because remember, all of last year or most of last year, they did not have that option. They were trying to get guys on waivers through the taxi squads, doing all this stuff. There were guys in transit. They didn't have a goalie. Like, they just didn't have anybody. And that was freaking everyone out because Mikko Koskinen was playing like crazy. And the Oilers had no other options. In your back pocket, you've got Alex Stalock all year. You know it. So that's got to be some value, isn't it?
I should have just told you beforehand and then just let you go and say it for him. Yeah, no, I'm absolutely right. But that's what makes it such a good value, is that he's a guy that, if he's flipping it around from that perspective, you're completely right. If he's not playing, he's not eating up a ton of cap space. That's not going to hurt you. It's not like a situation with Koskinen where it's like, well, we got this dude who's making $4.5 million. We feel we got to play him because we're paying him so much.
It's the flexibility that's the value, really. And
that's my argument
with the contract.
Right? Yeah, because you don't know. The goaltending is a question mark for the Oilers. Like, absolutely, they didn't improve it.
100%.
It could be really good, but it could be really bad. And if it is really bad, just to have that guy there, he might not come in and play very good. But just the idea that maybe you have that third string option that you could call, and Stuart Skinner's completely unproven. You kind of,
the competition,
Alex played pretty well for Minnesota. Like, we know that he can
go on stretches, he can go on runs or whatever, right? Like, even goalies just get hot, and it's at least he's a proven goalie. You know what you're going to get from him, and it at the very least, if he's competitive, at least he pushes everybody else to kind of step their game up too, right?
Yeah.
So
Brian, I don't hate your pick at all. It might be a little bit off the board, but I actually like your pick. I think it's even if he never plays a game, just having that is helpful for Edmonton. All right,
I'm done. All right,
there you go.
All right, check one for
stop while you're ahead. Okay, Julian, go for it. What's your pick?
I'm between two guys, but I think for this one, I'm going to go with Slater Koekkoek, just because I just like the way that they got him on a cheap deal and a 2-year deal. So they have him for a little bit of time. And Chris Russell, I think he comes off the books after this year, right?
Yeah,
Not
Chris
sure. Yeah,
Russell
he
signed
does.
a $1.25 million
Yeah,
extension
so
last season.
if he's going to be your depth, one of your depth guys that are going to be there, I mean, you know, you're going to need someone to replace Russell moving forward, and a guy who's making less than $1 million to probably do what Russell can do. You know, we've seen him. He maybe not have had a great year last year when he was with them in the first year, but you know, we've seen his upside in the playoffs a year ago when they played Chicago. So I think with more consistent minutes and he could actually be a key contributor in a limited role. And I think that the price point gives is something else that gives them the flexibility to be able to add pieces elsewhere.
Yeah, Slater Koekkoek's 2 years, 925. He's 27 years old. He'll be an unrestricted free agent at the end of those 2 years. Brian, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Oh, I really love the pick actually, and it's interesting to hear Julian's taking it, because I think you missed the show a couple weeks ago when we were talking about just coming off when they signed him. So I was curious what your take was on that.
Yeah,
I think I still like his ceiling, and I think it's another one of those contracts where if he plays to the level that we maybe hope he can or think he can, even if he's just a third pairing defenseman or your seventh defenseman that gives in 50 games this season, but he could be reliable, getting that for under $1 million is a good deal in this day and age, right?
Well, even to go off that is like you're trying to still replace Adam Larson. I know they brought in CC for that mainly, but you know, if they can even shoulder the load between CC and Koekkoek, then you know that's great value right there to be able to play him on the penalty kill and even his ability to play both sides, right? So I think the flexibility he provides, versatility he provides, and at the price point he's at, it's great.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the fact that he can go lefty, righty, move around, play in different situations, and I think the coaching staff. I might have mentioned this in a couple shows. I think the coaching staff really likes him. I just get the sense that we didn't get to see all of that because of his health last season. But when he did come back after sitting out for so many games, he was like right in there playing 17, 18 minutes a game. Like they just shoved him in. Like
in the playoffs, he was playing a fairly increased role significant wise. So
yeah, I think they have a lot of faith in what they think he can be or they've seen of him. So my guess is that that's probably a pretty good pick because they're probably going to play him more than most fans think they'll play him. You know, like you've got Evan Bouchard coming up, you've got other guys that may be a little more unproven. You don't know exactly how Cody Cece's going to pan out here. So if you have those options and you got a guy like Slater Koekkoek to kind of come in and fill in those minutes whenever something might not be going well that night, he's probably going to play a lot of minutes. So I don't mind that pick at all. All right. My choice is going to be a forward. So we've got a goalie covered. We've got a defensive covered. I'm going with a forward. I'm going to say Jesse Puljujärvi. I think that this is a guy who we just saw scraping the surface of what he's going to be able to do. He's getting bigger. He's getting smarter. He's learning how to use his frame. He's kind of knowing where to go. I think if he sticks with Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman, now that might not be the line that stays the entire season, but if that is a line that he's on to start the year and he gets on a roll early and so does that line, look out. Like I think Jesse Puljujärvi could really, really take a massive step this year. And if that happens, his contract is still like super, super cheap when you consider his potential. He's RFA at the end of the season, $1.175 million, 23 years old and just figuring out the game, right? If he can put it all together and give us just another step and a half beyond what we saw glimpses of last season, I think Puljujärvi is going to be a force. Julian, I'll let you go first. What do you think?
I agree that he's a good value. That's for sure. Just because of the upside he has in terms of, you know, what we saw from him last year and the price point he's at, and then the ability for him to still be at a very good number because he's an RFA. It makes a lot of sense. I'm just not sold on the fact that he can take that leap. I'm not sure that I feel like the expectations for what he's going to become are very high. And I'm not sure he's going to meet those standards of what fans or what people actually think he can become. I think the value for sure is there, especially playing with McDavid. The value is always going to be there because, you know, we've seen him be effective on the forecheck and in other ways of the game, whether it's not even always putting points on the board. So I'm not going to argue that point, but I'm just worried about his ceiling and long-term outlook. I'm not sure if the consistency and his overall understanding of the game is going to get there. That's my only fear.
Yeah, I guess I could see that argument. I will say, and I'll admit it in knowledge, he's going to have ups and downs. Like, there's no way that he's consistently good all year. He's too young. He's too fresh. He's just coming back to the NHL. I'll give you that for sure. I also believe, though, there's no real pressure on him. Like, I know that you might have mentioned or hinted at maybe him not hitting the ceiling or the expectations. Keep in mind, this is an RFA who, even if he hits it out of the park, is only going to get paid so much. So he's not like he's in a contract year, but he's not in such of a contract year that if he hits it out of the park, he's going to be rich. That's not going to happen. Course, all that's going to do is give the Oilers the
give him a 3-year bridge deal.
That's they'll either look at it long term and say, do we want to do this? Or they'll still do a bridge deal. And they have all the leverage the Oilers do. So it's not like Puljujärvi is going to come in here and go, oh my gosh, if I get 30 goals this year, I'm going to be, it's not happening. It's just not happening. So I don't think the pressure is there to have to live up and be a 20 goal guy this season, but I absolutely think he could. I think if he gets in the right rhythm and just goes on a real run here, we'll see. You could be right. I could be wrong. Brian, what do you think?
Well, he'll score 20 goals for sure. To the point of pressure on him, I think if there was any pressure on him, it would have been last year. Coming back, having to prove himself, basically that was kind of his last chance. I mean, he was at the bottom of the barrel when he left here in 2019, I guess it would have been, right? Or 2020. I don't know, these years I've lost all track of them, but yeah, you know what I'm saying. But yeah, he came back and, I think, and I just think the guy has the character, his personality. It doesn't. I think he's matured a lot, but he has that easygoing personality that I don't think that the pressure is going to get to him this year. What his ceiling could be, we could have a whole show on that, I think. But just for this year alone, what he'll do this year versus what he's going to get paid in this year alone, he's going to be a great value.
100%.
And agree. And you pointed out, Julian, I think anyone is potentially a great value playing with McDavid, right? Like, you could pay me $1 million a year.
Just stand beside the net with your stick beside the net, and he'll pass it right off.
Exactly, right. And so, I mean, that kind of clouds the pitch a little bit. But no, I agree with more of Jim. I remember, Jim, you wrote, I think it was in the middle of the season actually, that he could end up being like I don't know if you said he was the best or the second best player in that draft class.
I didn't argue that he was now, but I argued that he had the potential to be Matthew Koekkoek is a heck of a player, but Laine took a step backwards. Pierre-Luc Dubois took a step backwards. All these guys coming out of that draft class that were considered higher pedigree than him, and Puljujärvi hit the skids immediately, right? And then everybody wrote him off, and now he's coming back, and it looks like he's sort of figured out what he's supposed to be doing and how the game works. And then he started taking steps forward where everybody else regressed a little bit. So I'm like, man, if this kid can even just take a step at a time, a year, he could be really, really good. And I heard I can't remember who it was that I heard say on a podcast that there's an argument that you just wouldn't trade Puljujärvi for any of those players right now, because Puljujärvi is on a good deal. You don't know what his potential is going to be, and he could explode. And I think the Oilers just let's just wait and see what this kid can do. I think they're super excited for what his potential could be, but I don't know that they're putting a ton of pressure on him to be fantastic. You know what I mean? But yeah, I did write that. I took a lot of heat for that one, but I thought it was a pretty valid argument from my point that he has the potential to be one of the breakouts of that draft.
Yeah, I look at last year's year zero for him almost, right? I that's why I think there's so much more he could add to his game yet. I think we're just seeing him scratch the potential. He just wasn't in, the situation just wasn't right for him in the first go round. And I still think the ceiling is quite high.
Okay, so the good values, Brian has Alex Stalock, Julian has Slater Koekkoek, and I chose Jesse Puljujärvi. Julian, we'll start with you. So if that was good value, what's great value?
Is there another level tier after this?
Yeah, we'll call it elite.
Okay, so
good, great, elite. So
great value. I'm going to go with Tyson Barrie here. I just think that any guy with the ability to be a leading point producing defenseman in the NHL, and what we've seen his ability to contribute on the power play, the familiarity he's going to have on that power play. I just think in a full season that he's going to be able to even take a step forward from that. And at the dollar value of 4.5 AAV, to get a guy who can contribute at that level and help your power play that much, and even going into the playoffs, that's a crucial area of that you're going to need. So in terms of being able to produce that way, I just think that it's that $4.5 million. You're seeing guys like Dougie Hamilton, maybe he's more of a complete defenseman, I guess you could argue, but offensive defenseman that could lead the league or not getting paid under $5 million.
Yeah, like I'll definitely say that there's that tier of those guys that got 8.5 to 9.5, and they're in a different level than Tyson Barrie. But at the same time, you are right. Offensively, leading the league in points, what he can offer you on a puck, what you're getting. What I really like about the Tyson Barrie contract, and I've mentioned this before, is that I think the number doesn't put pressure on him or the Oilers to play him in a certain spot all year long. I think you can move him up and down between those 3 spots on the right side, depending on what a guy like Evan Bouchard will do or where somebody else is. And no one's going to look at Tyson Barrie and go, oh my gosh, this is so terrible. Right? Like if you sign a guy for $7 million, or like what Darnell Nurse is going to have to deal with, not this season, but next, if he doesn't perform, people are going to just lose it, right?
Yep.
Tyson Barrie, if he's just mediocre, average, pretty good Tyson Barrie, $4.5 million is a pretty good deal. So you know what your floor is with a guy like this, and at $4.5 million, I think you're okay with it. And so for that reason, I can see why it makes sense to call that a great value. And you've got him locked in, right? It's a surprise deal for what?
Cost certainty. Yeah.
$750,000 more than what everybody looked at last year. Going, wow, what a fantastic deal. It's not that much more, right? And it's a little term. So I think it was good, great value to get him at that number and get him at those years, because when he left last season, everybody figured 5-year deal, $6 million, like just way out of the Oilers ballpark, right? Brian, what's your thought on that one?
That was actually my exact pick, and you guys made pretty much every point that I would in favor of him. So yeah, no, I think Tyson Barrie, if you can get a guy, Julian addressed it. We know his defensive deficiencies, but for him to produce like he can offensively, to get him at that rate, it's just great. And I've come around more on your take on that the two, Jim, about there not being pressure on him, and particularly the point about not the team not being pressured to play him in a certain role. I think that could really factor its way in here. I'm sure it probably will, because he's probably going to have some. Eventually, he's going to hit the skids. I think he's going to have a slump or two or several over the next few years. So I think, but ultimately, if this guy's given you, like, if you project over last year, he would be close to a 70-point defenseman in a full season. Now, I'm not expecting that, but if you even have a guy that's giving you 50, 60 on the blue line a year, that's a great price.
Yeah, $4.5 million. How can you complain about that? Okay, so you guys both have Tyson Barrie, and I'll go with somebody who's like right. You can compare them, right? Like they're connected, I think, at the hip this season. I'm going with Evan Bouchard, and this is a projection for me. I know some people will disagree, and some people think he's going to play a ton. I happen to be one of those guys that think he's going to play a lot. Some people are going to go, they'll start him on the third pair, and then maybe he'll work his way up. I think that probably is the case too, but I think he's going to work his way up really quickly. And when you look at what Evan Bouchard could do, and you look at his actual contract, he's $863,000 for the next 2 years. He's 21 years old. The projections for him are massive. I don't want to say that he's got a ton of pressure on him, because I don't think he does. And that's why I like the Tyson Barrie comparison, because if Evan Bouchard starts to pick up his game and he's coming in and he's doing well in a second unit power play, then all of a sudden you're like, man, we should give this guy a shot on the first unit power play. Nobody's going to look at Tyson Barrie and go, well, why did you get him? Like, why'd you sign him if all you were going to do is put Evan Bouchard there? I think you have the ability to move those two guys around and interchange them, and no one will care, because Evan Bouchard is so cheap and Tyson Barrie is such a good deal that whether they're first unit or second unit, it works out great. So I think the projections for Evan Bouchard are really, really strong. And at $863,000, I mean, shoot, all he has to do is get 30 points and everybody's going like, this is fantastic. If he happens to get 40, or as some people are projecting 50, if he plays first unit power play, look at what we'll be thinking at the end of the year going, oh my gosh, this is like the future of our blue line, right? So I'm picking Evan Bouchard in that spot. Julian, what's your take on that one?
Yeah, I like that one. That's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, the upside is definitely there, especially with him being so young. And like you said, if he can hit that first unit power play, I mean, sky's the limit, really, if it's as potent as it was last year. So, I mean, the upside is definitely there. And if you can get that kind of production out of a rookie, that's what the NHL has become, where you need these guys to step in right away and be key contributors on all levels of their game. And if he can be even just a smidge of what we're saying and put up, like you said, 30 points, I mean, that's great value as it is from a rookie. And then you just build from there. And it should actually be a couple more years before he signs. Yeah, he's
got 2 years and then he's an RFA, right?
Yeah, so he's looking pretty good. And if he can even contribute 30 and then take a step another year after that, I mean, that's great value for the next 2 years.
Brian, what's your thought on that one?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what he's going to do this year, but if he does anything, really, and I think you can say that about a lot of the kids that could potentially find their way into the lineup. Whether it's, you look at Ryan. Hopefully, I'm not stealing anybody's names here, but the likes of like Ryan McLeod, Dylan Holloway, even Tyler Benson, if it ends up that he somehow catches on with the team. And if Julian hit on it, you need these young guys come in and produce right away. And it's a lot of it has to do with relative their production relative to their cap hits. You're going to have, especially with the way the league is evolving now, and you're getting these back end loaded contracts and guys that are eating up a lot of cap space and not contributing towards to the degree they're getting paid. You need to counter that the opposite way. And Bouchard can certainly be part of that group. I think if he gives you 25 points this year, that's not a bad rate. And I think he's either gonna, like, if he's playing regularly, he's gonna score at least that much, because if he's playing regularly, he's gonna be in that role. So it's either like he will or he won't. Does that mean, I don't know if I'm making sense here?
Yep.
But
Yeah. They're not going to put him in a place that he's not going to excel.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. That's the deal. You deploy him where he's most useful, and where he's most useful is going to be in a position to put points on the board.
Yeah. So, I like that pick too.
All right. So Julian's got Tyson Barrie. Brian's got Tyson Barrie. I went with Evan Bouchard. Okay. So Brian went first. Julian went second. I'll go first on the elite value contracts. I'm going to go with Leon Draisaitl. This may be a choice from others, maybe a little obvious here, but this is a player that is he just continues to wow you. He's $8.5 million. He's got 4 years left on his deal. 25 years old, 2 seasons of 100 points. Now, last season was a little different because it was a shortened season, but he's incredible. Like, so much better than we ever could have possibly thought this guy would turn out to be. Everybody thought, oh man, 8.5 million when this contract was signed, and look at what we're looking at now. We're looking back at this deal going, oh my gosh, it's the one thing Chiarelli did like really, really well. Like, he got that deal done. It was really good timing. He's exploded offensively and been more than I think most people probably would have projected. And the only reason he wasn't talked about more last season was because Connor McDavid was so outstanding. It was hard to even really realize what Draisaitl was doing right behind him. So I'm going to still go with that as my elite value contract, simply because he makes $4 million less than Connor McDavid does. I still think he's not going to get the points that Connor McDavid will probably get, but I'm going because of the 8.5 versus 12.5. Leon Draisaitl is my pick for the elite value contract. Big money, but he's worth every penny. Brian, what do you think about that choice?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Because to frame it, I'll frame it like this. If you signed him right now to a long-term contract, how much would you be having to pay to get him?
11,
at least 12.
Yeah,
exactly.
11,
yeah. So that's all you got to say right there. Yeah, 8.5 is a ton of money. It's a lot less than you would be paying. So I mean, from that perspective, like, you said 12 and a half, Julian, you think 12 and a half?
Yeah, I think you get 12 for sure, I think.
So you're paying him $3.5 million less a year than you would. I mean, that's got to be like the best deal in the NHL on just about, right? So.
Well, and the thing about it too is that it lasts for 4 more years, right? Like, you've got Nathan McKinnon. Yeah. He might be the best value in hockey.
Yeah, I think
he's coming up right away, right? And there's some of these guys that are really underpaid, but they're coming up right away. And these teams are going to have to deal with those contracts. Yeah, Leon Draisaitl comes up before most of the other guys, but he's still 4 years. Like, you've still got half of that contract you signed with him to go, right?
And those 4 years are going to be arguably the best if you look at his age.
He's in his prime, yeah.
Yep.
100%. I agree. Yeah, that was going to be my pick, but it's hard not to miss on that one. I mean, anybody could have said that, and for the reasons we stated. I mean, McKinnon's the only other guy I think that would match that level of bargain contract. And, it'd be interesting to see if McKinnon does sign lower, like he's been saying, he'd take a discount again to help the team win and stuff like that. But, in this age, it's everybody's going right for those big deals. And, that 4 years is going to be really nice down the road.
Brian, was Draisaitl your pick, or you had somebody else?
Yeah, well, pretty much Draisaitl, but it was kind of a co-pick between him and McDavid. And I know McDavid makes a ton, but I mean, you can't put a price on this dude. So,
yeah, for sure.
At 12.5 million is a ton of money. It'd be interesting. I'll ask you guys this: how much would he make today? Like how much? What could he command if he was a free agent walking out there and you could sign him for, let's say, 6 years?
Well, okay. Are you asking what the Oilers would do or what any one of the 32 teams would do?
Well, would any one of the 32 teams, what's the
max for one player? 20? Like what's the percentage one player can? I don't know what the actual answer is, but there's a number.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it's that. Whatever that max is, one team would pay him that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Let's say he was a UFA and you could, but you're right. I mean, maybe the Oilers could probably maybe get him for a little bit less, but I mean, I think, the guy's priceless, literally. So whatever you're paying him, 12.5 million, that's probably a little less too. So it's interesting that the two biggest contracts on this team are, you could
the best
make
values,
a case for both of them being the best values. Yeah,
I don't know. I find it's kind of unfortunate. If you look at other sports compared, like not to get a little bit off a tangent here, but if you look at other sports compared to hockey, that cap is so limited to what these players are able to make. And like, it sets the market so low for them where these guys are making, the best players making 13 million. Then you see the NBA, AC, MLB, all these guys are getting paid and they're coming off like one hit wonder seasons and getting multi-million-dollar deals. So, I mean, it's kind of, to put it in perspective where your best hockey player in the league is getting paid what some of the, more depth role players are in other sports. It's kind of unfortunate. I'd like to see something happen with some sort of luxury tax or something where these players can start making more for what they're providing.
So
go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, no, some of the transfer fees in the last week or so are probably like 6 years worth of Connor McDavid. So, yeah, it's unbelievable. But that's just, I mean, I guess that just puts in perspective where hockey, I don't want to go off on a tangent here either, but I mean, where hockey is
exactly
the landscape of, interesting to put that in the context of what the salary cap could go in the next few years.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. One, if you look at the popularity of what country hockey is the most popular, it's Canada versus the US. The US market's just bigger. The television rights for NFL, NBA are massive. Like, the hockey ones are good, but they're not nearly close to those.
No way.
And if you look at basketball, where you got 13 guys on a team, like you can afford to give a much bigger percentage. So that's why they're making $50 million bucks a year, right? So the TV deals are huge. So if the NHL can put those deals together or something even remotely similar, I wouldn't be shocked at all if in 5 years that cap goes up to the point where we're looking at guys like McDavid on that next contract, just getting a crazy amount of money. And you got to consider too, some teams are going to value what's important differently. Some markets are going to go, I don't really care if we win. I just want somebody who's going to bring in people. And Connor McDavid will absolutely do that. He will sell out an arena like Gretzky did when he went to LA. People just wanted to go to LA to watch this guy play. Right. And so that's the value that Connor McDavid can bring to you, not only because he's the best player in the NHL, arguably, but he will draw in an audience and he will bring people to the games, which is worth every penny you pay him because your team's just going to make the money back. Right. So yeah, it's super crazy that 12.5 million isn't even close to probably what he could be making. It'll be very interesting to see if he continues to go on his 5 years ends and he's just upping up like what they're looking at and how that deal will be structured. Because at some point, an 8-year deal or whatever that max might be, if another CBA rolls around, like, I don't know, like what's this guy going to be worth, right? Yeah, but I considered McDavid too, just because, like you said, Brian, there's just no price you can put on a guy like that. But because of the number difference between the two contracts and how close these two guys actually can be in points, and they're always like 1-2 the last 3 seasons, I just went with Draisaitl for that. I'll ask one more question to both of you before we close things off. Did you have a sleeper, somebody that you had considered to put on one of your categories? I'm kind of like, hey, outside of McDavid, obviously. Did you have somebody that you really looked at? Brian, were you looking at a player that you're like, I really kind of want to put him there, but he just got edged out by this dude?
Not really, to be honest. Maybe someone like I mentioned, some of the kids like Holloway or McLeod, if they can end up coming in and being a contributor. But we really don't know what they're going to be, how much they're going to play, and if they do, what role they're going to play on this team. So, but those would probably be the other guys that I did consider.
What about you, Julian? Did you have anybody?
I like the Holloway one. I think they added a lot to their depth core right now. So I think it might be a little bit further down the road for him before he is able to jump in and make an impact. But instead of, I agree with the Draisaitl one, but to replace that one for me, I think I would probably say Zach Hyman. I just think that even though the contract may look worse down the road, I think that what he can provide in terms of his depth, his versatility, his flexibility up and down the lineup, the ability to play both power play, net front, and on the penalty kill. I think he can be a key contributor on the penalty kill. Just his character, his attitude. I think he brings a lot to the dressing room. He's a very upbeat player, and tries to get the best. He's a fan favorite. And I think that him on the forecheck, and he has that upside. He's produced I think a 41 point season was his best. And that was playing, back in 2018-19. So I think that playing with McDavid, sky's the limit there too. I think he can even step that up a level, and to make $5 million, I think even his all-around defensive game, you can throw him out in the defensive zone and not have to worry about it. It's just stability, consistency. What you're getting from him, and it's as long as he stays healthy, that's going to be the same all year long.
One guy I was considering putting on the list was actually Derek Ryan. Now, I haven't seen him play a ton, to be honest with you, but there's something about what I do know of him and what I've heard about him. He reminds me a little bit of what Michael Pekka brought the Oilers back in 2006. Do you remember that? He was a guy that only got like 23 points. He didn't really produce a ton offensively, but he won every faceoff you put him out there for. He was super reliable. That's exactly what I think the Oilers signed Derek Ryan for. And he's 34 years old, so he's got the experience. That was a guy I heavily considered putting in my good value. Jesse Puljujärvi edged him out because I'm really thinking Puljujärvi could explode this season. But Derek Ryan, I think, has got a little bit of that Michael Pekka in him, where he could be that guy you're looking at going, oh my gosh, it's so good that the Oilers got this guy, because he's just so reliable, penalty killing, face-off wins, big moments in games. It's a guy you put out there, right? And it's a guy the Oilers haven't really had for a while. So he was a guy, but I don't know enough about him and haven't watched him close enough to know that he's going to produce at that level. We'll see. But yeah, no, this is a really interesting show. What we might want to do at some point is maybe look at the worst ones. We looked at the best ones. We might want to take a look at the worst ones.
We could do that.
We'll get a ton of comments on it. That'll be very interesting. All right.
I mean, if we have nothing next week, maybe we'll see.
Yeah, we could absolutely do that next week. We'll see if any news happens. I don't imagine there's going to be a ton of signings or trades or anything like that. So we're going to be coming up with some creative topics to talk about. And for anybody who's watching this and you have a thought on any of our picks, put it in the comment section. Let us know what you think. Try to be nice to us if you could possibly do it. We're only human. We'll answer your comments. If you have ideas about the worst contracts, and we end up doing that show next week, put it in there, because we'll absolutely answer them on the show, and we'll refer to them when we talk about it. Julian, Brian, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys joining us to talk about the best value contracts in the Oilers. For everybody else, I appreciate it. Hit that like button on YouTube and Facebook. Hit the notification buttons. Get all the videos as they come out, and check out all the other content on the Hockey Raiders too, because there's tons of good stuff going on right now. Even though we're in the slow time of the NHL, there's still tons of great content out there. See you guys next week, and we'll talk to you on another edition of THW Oilers Overtime next week. See you guys.